Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Age of Empires 3 Coaching with me, Interjection. This is episode number 2 in this series, and it is a series that I started a fairly long time ago, that I've only ever made one episode of, and it is back by popular demand. So, today, we're going to be looking at two games, one between a Master Sergeant and a Sergeant, respectively. This one here, Mr. Brownboy versus Chippy666, and the following game will be between Aid and Killer Saber, who are both lieutenants. The idea is I'm going to be providing, perhaps, educational commentary, I guess. The idea is to provide insight into the things that they could do differently, perhaps the things they did wrong, and just to provide general help, tips, and hints. So if you're expecting really high-level gameplay like I would normally upload, then this might not be for you. But if this is for you, then that's great, and I would love it if you stuck around for it. The first game, of course, these two are lower-level players. We'll start with that. Might be pointing out some of the more obvious mistakes and some of the, perhaps, things that newer players might not, or might find more useful. And then in the following game, we'll point out, have a more clear-cut focus on lieutenant-level gameplay, where things are not quite as obvious or not quite as important, but still could be done differently and have that kind of tighter focus on the game. So here we are, 13, 14, and 15 seconds into the game, and 16, all three settlers are now gathering food. Excellent, 16 seconds in. Right, well, bear in mind, settlers, or French settlers more to the point, gather food at a rate of about 1 food per second. And if they're idle for 16 seconds, then you can do the math there. That's food lost, and that's going to slow you to age 2. It's going to reduce the competitiveness of your strategy or whatever you intend to do. So just a quick tip, as soon as the game starts, you literally do have a 12-second window in which you can kill any animal, and the rest of the herd will not run away, will not go in a different direction, and, those three settlers you had that walked across the map, they can basically get to work much, much quicker, and, of course, that's good for you. Slightly on a side note, it's best to only use 2 settlers to start gathering food, because as France, you start with 5 settlers, every other civilization gets 6. So, actually, French settlers are stronger than regular settlers, so you can use 2 of them to kill an animal, and it'll kill a bison, just 2 French settlers will kill a bison, and then you use the 3 remaining settlers to gather up the food crates, 1 on each different food crate, or if you only have 2 food crates, then 2 settlers on 1 crate, and 1 on the other crate. Here, going for a 50 coin treasure, nice, we'll discuss that in a moment, but, of course, you want to get those food crates up as fast as you possibly can, because for each and every second you delay not training that first settler, you delay every other settler that you train that game by that same amount of time, and that also adds up, stacks up in the terms of the amount of resources that you're wasting. So food crates at the beginning, most important thing to get before, other animals and stuff like that. But anyway, that's not too important. What you did here is, I believe you sent your scout and your explorer around the same area to kind of look for, perhaps, those muskrat treasures, those beaver treasures, like I pointed out. Here's some nice creeping, actually. Going to let these run back, then shoot. Not too bad. Of course, get a few free shots in whilst they're running back towards their treasure. And, of course, they will both run back to in a moment. And then you need to crack shot the full HP one there. And then you can go into hand combat with the one that you've done damage to, and perhaps get your scout involved to help you kill off the remaining polar bear. But for whatever reason, you've decided to not go for that treasure. Perhaps you found a different treasure. This is 100 XP, which is really good if you can get that before your first shipment, because it basically gives you your first shipment instantly. But the only map you can really get 100 XP on as a treasure before your first shipment, I believe, is New England, because it's not guarded by 2 polar bears, and 2 polar bears is actually very difficult to kill, so you'd never get that treasure before your first shipment, so it's not the most ideal one to be getting. There's a settler treasure there, working on that, crack-shotting one of the bears, and then coming back once you crack-shot recharges to get it in the same way that I just mentioned for this treasure would be really, really good. The best treasure, there's 90 wood here, 90 coin, 90 wood, 150 food. This is the treasure you ought to go for. Of course, though, I won't fault you too much. It is quite far away. It's quite near your opponent, so it might be a bit dangerous to get here. Though we'll discuss what is going on right now. Going for the 90 wood treasure and tanking all of the damage from these wolves. And of course, you had the right idea with the polar bears, where you got to the peripheral of them and let them run back towards the treasure once you got far away enough. Like here, I imagine you're going to do it now. You're running away and then turn around and shoot them just like that, whilst they're running back towards the treasure. And of course, they will turn around and come back to you, but you were tanking the damage right next to the treasure, and if you tank the damage as far away from the treasure as possible, then you're on the outskirts of the treasure and you can escape from the wolves once you've killed one, and then they'll start running back towards the treasure, so you'll tank actually less damage. Some nice creeping there, actually. So there's that. Right, we'll go back to the coin discussion. And that was 50 coin. I believe you sent your explorer around here to 550 coin and your scout. And of course, you only need to send 1 unit, but you probably know that. Sending your scout around this way, sorry, your explorer around this way is perfectly fine as France, because of course you went for the early market and you wanted the 50 coin in order to get hunting dogs. And it's always best to collect it from a treasure than it is to actually collect it. So going around with your explorer here is fine as France, but with other civilizations perhaps not so, because really you want to be in this area here where you actually are looking for all of these big treasures that you can get. Now going for 90 coin. Not too bad. The other 90 wood treasure would be optimal, but of course this is guarded by less guardians, so perhaps you feel more comfortable getting that, who knows. With a scout though, as well, actually with any other civilization, scouting this kind of area with your explorer is, I guess it's really up to the player, but you want to be in this area as quickly as possible, getting these big treasures. But at the same time, you do want to find your first herd. So if you don't have your first herd in line of sight, then it's, you know, it might be a good idea to scout this area for it. And of course, you found this herd, you're bringing this one back. You actually do have a second herd, which I'd recommend bringing back as well. As soon as you find that herd, it is best to send that settler out there and start gathering or start shooting them towards your town, because you do only have a limited amount of time until you're in the colonial age, where they'll start to be military units, and you know, then you've run out of time. You need to get those herds back in ASAP. Alright, and this herd here is also viable. It's smaller, but it is close enough to your town to justify getting it. 3 idle settlers there. Of course, you only need the 1 to herd, by the way, but I'm sure you know this. You probably needed all of those settlers over there anyway. But you have 134 wood in your stockpile, which is really good, actually, because, of course, you're going for steel traps. So I'm happy with the fact that you've, of course, done that. You are actually now getting placer mines as well, and I'm not sure if this is going to be part of your build, but it depends how much coin, really, you're going to be collecting in the colonial age as to whether or not this upgrade will be worth it early on. Since you're up against Spain, you're not going to be facing much pressure during the colonial age, so getting that is perfectly fine, but say up against other civilizations that might pressure you quite hard, or harder, then depending on how much coin you're collecting, then it might not be worth it, because if you only have 2 or 3 settlers on coin, then is it really worth having the 10% upgrade? Because it's quite an expensive upgrade, the coin one is, whereas the hunting dogs is almost always worth it, because the majority of your settlers will almost always be on food. So we'll switch over to the other player, 700 wood as his first shipment here. So yeah, but I wasn't going to fault you on the coin treasure, the coin upgrade, by the way. That comes down to preference and I guess the civilization you're up against. But 700 wood on the way. We'll switch over to the other player though and take a look at what he's doing briefly, just to get in the context of the game, though the focus will be on Bramboy, since of course he is the guy who submitted this. Looks like this guy's going for a fast fortress. Now I remember when I first checked the video just to see what civilizations they were playing, I noticed this guy doing a few strange things in Age 1. We'll take a look at his home city. Behold! Sergeant level fortress deck. Makes me laugh every time that he has a hot air balloon in here. Absolutely great. And fabulous. But hot air balloon, really not a good card. It doesn't influence the game in any way, and with regards to the ability, yes, it helps you scout and places that you otherwise might not be able to get a scout, but you only need a glance at what your opponent's got anyway to judge what's going on in the game, and you can do that with your hero. You can do that with a low HP pikeman. You can do that with a war dog, and sending a card which is worth the equivalent, or could be, of 700 resources really is not worth it. It's probably the worst card in the game. The hot air balloon just does not influence the game. And this player he sent 700 food on the floor right now, and yes, he's got the age up in queue, but I find it questionable. 700 food, you know, we'll discuss the normal Fortress Age build. Alright, so the first shipment you send is 3 settlers, which appears to be what he has done, and he has sent it, it's blotted out. So 3 settlers, first home city shipment, and then you do not send anything else until you're in age 2. Once you click the age up button, you switch every settler to wood and get 200 or 250 wood exactly, depending on how much you need for a trading post, depending on which game, either vanilla or the Asian Dynasties you're playing, and you start to build a trading post, because you will need that in the Fortress Age to keep the shipments coming in, and it is not really worth doing a fast fortress, or at least a naked fortress, without a trading post. So you do that, and then, of course, as soon as you hit the colonial, well, as soon as you get the wood for that trading post, you switch every settler back to food, and your first home city shipment in age 2 will be 700 coin, and of course you age up with a tower and 200 coin, so that's 900 coin. More often than not, you'll start with 100 coin on the floor, so that's 1,000 coin. If not, then you do have to collect 1,000 coin, but on Great Plains you do get those beaver treasures, which is essentially 100 coin. And then, you know, that's all the coin you need to age up. Every settler just stays on food. And I believe this player went up with the Philosopher's Prince, which is 500 food. He does not have an outpost. A little bit risky, because that tower is going to help you defend off any colonial pressure. And also you can stick it on your hunts, like over here, which have not actually been optimally herded. Bramboy coming in for some raiding. Not too bad at all, actually, because, of course, the raiding going to keep these settlers off. And you're not going to be too successful, because he's not actually collecting any food. But, of course, you want to be raiding the hunts, but he isn't actually collecting food. You see this hunt is dead, actually. You can click on it and see if the food's going down. It goes down at a rate of 1 food per second anyway, but anything greater than that means that settlers are gathering from it. But, yes, keeping the settlers in the town centre is good. If he had a tower, he could stick that up next to his coin mine, and he wouldn't have to go in and out of his town centre constantly, but didn't go up with the tower, so there's that. But I guess the guy's trying kind of streamlined the build. I don't know what the food was about, because it would still be more efficient to send coin, but he hasn't sent wood. But he's going to need wood, because in the Fortress Age, you can't support a Fortress Age army without population, and if you're not sending the wood to build houses, then you will have to collect it with your settlers, and it's not efficient to do that, because wood is the slowest gathering resource, meaning therefore it's more efficient to collect other resources with your settlers and to ship the wood. That would be the most efficient thing to do. Not sure if I agree with this Bramboy coming in here. He's just hit up to the next stage, you know that, you saw that. He's either going to have 4 cavalry or 8 pikemen on the field, and therefore coming into his base at that time really isn't a good idea. So there's that. But, never mind. Now sending a fort. Wow. Wow. Fast fort fortress. That's not what the... When people say fast fortress, this isn't what they mean. Because the idea of going up to the Fortress Age is to be really, really aggressive with the shipments and, of course, the more powerful army. Sending a fortress is kind of the opposite of that, and securing hunts with it, I guess, would be okay. It's the only thing you could do. Perhaps being aggressively securing hunts, maybe. I don't know. But, yeah, there's that. Anyway, he's going to have to collect a lot of wood here, and really if he'd shipped 700 wood, then, you know, you don't have to do that. You have more shipments to spend. Sorry, you have more resources to spend on other units that you can train at your stable or barracks. And arguably not sending the 700 wood, you could say, yeah, well, he's not sending 700 wood, so he's got an extra shipment for military. Yeah, that's fabulous. Well, yeah, it sounds good, but in reality, not sending 700 wood just means that you won't be able to train as many units, which is probably going to be more units than a shipment. So there's that. But we'll switch it, now sending 1,000 food, possibly the least efficient Fortress Age shipment, except for the 1 cannon. Maybe the 7 Rodelero shipment on the Asian dynasties. That's pretty stupid as well. All right, so let's take a look at what Mr. Bramboy is doing. Here we see a stable and 2 barracks. He has a musk mass, and of course we saw the cavalry from earlier that he was raiding with. So let's take a look, or talk about the build that he's done. We'll take a look at the home city, and his first shipment was 700 wood. So he hits up, of course, to the colonial age through the quartermaster with 400 wood, and then with that wood, spent 200 of it on a stable, and the other 200 of it on a barracks. Now, he can then put of course, a hussar in queue, and 1 musketeer in queue, but at this point he doesn't have any houses, which is why his first shipment was 700 wood. So once you've got these 2 buildings up, your 700 wood should be nearly here, and of course you've got one unit, that is, in queue at each one. You collect up your 700 wood and build a house, and then once that house is up really quick, you can just quickly pop in the rest, you know, the remaining 4 units, depending on if you want cavalry or musketeers, or if you have enough resources for both, then both, and that's great. You've then got some units out nice and quickly. And with those cavalry, you can do some raiding early on. And at your barracks, perhaps you're up against a civilization where you need to defend more, or perhaps you just want musketeers, then you've got musketeers for that as well. And with that 700 wood that arrives, you can add in a second barracks, which he has done too. And then you have the option either to mass musketeers at both of these barracks should you need them, or at the stable you can just make cavalry up, perhaps both. But really it depends what your civilization is doing. This is a really solid French build for a lot of times. It's a colonial agenda, but in this particular game it is not the right build to be doing against gaming. Yes, certainly you could do this one, but I think a safer build, or perhaps a build you feel more comfortable doing, is the semi-fast fortress. It would certainly be a lot stronger against what Spain can do, because at this point in the game, Spain, at least a good Spain, can mass 2 cannon. Well, they're up at 730 to the Fortress Age, right? And then by 8 minutes, their first shipment has arrived, which can be 2 cannons. And in the Colonial Age, before they hit up, they can send 7 Rodelero, and in the Colonial Age as well, they can train 10 Rodelero, or perhaps 10 Musketeer, whichever they prefer. Either way, that's 17 anti-cavalry units, plus 2 Falconets, plus their Explorer, plus 5 War Dogs, plus 4 Cavalry, or 8 Pikemen, depending on which politician they chose to age up. That's a lot to deal with at the 8-minute mark, and they can pressure you hard and fast. This Colonial build might not be strong enough to deal with that, because of course, well, they'll be training skirmishers as well, of course, from their barracks, and that would do quite well against the musketeer mass. And also they can follow up with their next shipment, which could be 5 lancers, which are really strong if backed up by other units, or perhaps they'll follow up with 12 pikemen and continue to mass skirmishers, and Spain can be really, really solid, okay? What he did do, however, was raid at the, of course, with his stable. Now, we'll talk about the build that he ought to have done, because I think Bramboy would be just rammed up the bum if against a good Spain here. But with the semi-fast fortress, instead of building these barracks and such, you just go, you age up with 400 wood, and then with 200 out of that wood, you build a stable, and with the other 200 wood, you build houses, and you have your food and coin production well, you have food and coin production distributed evenly for make 5 cavalry, just 5 cavalry, and then you do the raiding like Mr. Bramboy did, and you kill off, you try to kill off settlers, and you, of course, try to raid and stop your opponent working. And if a good France that raids like this can kill off a lot of settlers, or if they can, just stop their opponent working with their settlers, and you can really limit the amount of units that Spain will have. You can certainly make them, they might not be able to get there, all of the anti-cavalry that they want to train in the colonial age done, but then, you know, maybe the Spain isn't going to be as aggressive as I'm saying. Perhaps they're going to save all of those resources anyway and not train anti-cavalry, and perhaps just train skirmishers and train those, you know, stronger units in age 3. But, you know, either way, they're going to have less units, right? That's the thing. And the thing with the semi-fast fortress is that you yourself are going up to fortress. That's why it's called a semi-fast fortress. But the idea is to send the 4 settler shipment here. That would be your first home city shipment, because that gets your economy rolling nice and early. You get these steel traps upgrade, you get the market upgrades and all that such, and you have a really nice eco rolling. And then you follow up with 700 coin, 700 wood. You go up to fortress really, really quickly, but with the settlers, of course, you will be slower just behind them, and the 5 cavalry can raid, but you go up with the exiled prince. You go up really, really quickly. I believe Mr. Bramboy actually went up with 6 skirmishers here. I won't fault him for that, because I guess this is part of his colonial agenda, but 6 skirmishers is too slow, because you want to get up quickly so you can actually start to train those units that you're massing the resources up for, and also you'll be generating, there's that fort by the way, also you'll be generating shipments, and you'll probably stack up 1 or 2 shipments whilst you're in the colonial age. That's not ideal. You want to go up with the exile prince so you can start spending those shipments. And before I continue with this semi-FF discussion, let's just have a look at the combat going on here. If you would bring the dragoons into the fight here, you want all of your military units in one area, because for each extra military unit you have in the fight, there's kind of like an exponential curve effect of the effectiveness of your army. But here the Spanish player is being absolutely awfully bad by not bringing these dragoons back. Of course, dragoons, you can run them away from your opponent and then shoot, and then you can run them away and then shoot, and that's the end of the game. But don't go anywhere, because of course I haven't finished my semi-FF discussion. And that's kind of the key idea here. That's the key strategy you ought to be using in Spain. Is you have those 4 settlers early on, of course, for the economy, and you're doing your raiding as well. You're slowing Spain down, and the point of being in the fortress age, after you, of course, send 700 coin to get up to the fortress age, and then 700 wood for, of course, houses and such, because you'll need that to support your fortress age armies, that you have a nice economy in the fortress age. In Spain is the civilization which uses the shipments to really pressure hard and quickly, but France uses the economy to train the units. And yes, they'll ship some units, but the majority of the units that they're making will actually be making them. That's the key word, that they're using their economy to make the units. And yeah, Spain will probably be pressuring you in your base, and you'll be on the defensive, and you'll be waiting for your 8 skirmisher shipment to arrive once you hit up, and you'll be waiting for your first batches of units, and then you want to kind of, as that all arrives, call your Minutemen or whatever, and you can try and push Spain out of your base. And that's where the key moment of the kind of the game happens with the semi-FF. But that is the semi-FF. So I'll just briefly go over the build order Bramboy did. It's a really nice colonial agenda that can work reasonably well in a number of different situations. You, of course, go 3 settlers as your very first card, and then you follow up in the colonial age with 700 wood. And of course you age up with 400 wood when you build a stable and a barracks, and then with that 700 wood you can build some houses and a second barracks. Of course you want to get your market upgrades as well, and then after 700 wood you send 4 settlers to make that economy going, and then really the rest is up to you. If you want to go up to fortress, you send 700 coin. If you are being pressured really hard and you need more units, you could send 8 crossbowmen. If you're getting ready to push out, then maybe an upgrade, or you could say 8 crossbowmen again, just to those few extra units for that critical mass to push out. But the build against Spain here is a different one, and I'll just go over that build order briefly again. We have 3 settlers as your first home city shipment, and then as soon as you hit up, you send 4 settlers as your first home city shipment. And of course, with that 400 wood you age up with, just build a stable, 2 houses, mass 5 cavalry, and try and raid to the best of your ability. You do not want to lose the cavalry, being very careful not to lose them, but constantly harassing whoever you're harassing, and you can keep them in their base. However, you don't have to go with the stable. You can actually build a barracks, and instead of making 5 hussars, you could make 10 musketeers. And there are variants on that, where you might even make 15 musketeers, or something like that. But the idea is you send those 4 settlers first of all, and that's for the economy. And then you head up to the fortress age, of course, with the 700 coin, and then the 700 wood, of course, for the houses. And you've got this nice economy behind you to mass units in the fortress age. And then there you go. Those are the two different builds for Spain that I'm covering for France that I'm covering today. And I hope this was educational for certainly Mr. Brownboy and indeed anyone else watching. So, and if not that, then at least entertaining. Thank you very much for listening to me. My name has been Interjection. I'm certainly not a pro player, but I like to think that I have a reasonable amount of game knowledge and that that is enough to pass on to lower level players. I'll see you next time. I quickly like to add that I said I was going to go for a lieutenant level game, and we will do that, but probably in the next video, because I think it's going to be at least a 40-minute long video, and I think splitting it up would probably be a lot more accessible to people. So in the next video, we will go over the lieutenant game, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the video. So thank you very much for watching, and I will actually go this time. Goodbye.